Welcome to the Female Stoic Podcast. My name is Stephanie Poppins, and I am an advocate for literary empowerment. That means I believe the examples set by the literary masters can broaden our life perspective, create increased self-awareness, and empower us to overcome the obstacles we encounter here in the 21st century. By listening and referring what we hear to Stoic philosophy, we can foster a strong sense of self and navigate the world more effectively. This podcast takes the form of both discussions and meditations. And if you like what you hear, you might consider looking me up on my socials, where I post empowering videos every day. Or you may like my classic audiobooks and original stories available on my website, newworldbooks.co.uk. Happy listening. Okay, welcome to another edition of the Female Stoic Podcast. And today we are looking at Stoic loss. As we gain, so it stands to reason we must lose, and it's very much a part of life. And we are looking at how journaling can support this. We'll be referring to an author today rather than a specific book, although we will reference one of the books that I've been looking at this week. And that author is Virginia Woolf, who was an avid journaler and suffered much loss in her life and also mental illness as a consequence of that. So who was Virginia Woolf? Well, she was an author, born in 1882, lived to 1941, who suffered many mental health issues, beginning with the death of her mother when she was 13. And she never really got over that. So that was a tragic theme running through her life. Unfortunately, she suffered at the hands of those who molested her, half-siblings, stepbrothers, from the age of 6. So she had a really bad time of it. But today we are looking specifically at her superpower, which was the experimental style of stream of consciousness writing and narration. And this is reflected in her journals. And we're talking today about the efficacy of journaling as practicing Stoics. So obviously, her more experimental style was less structured than the Stoic style of journaling, but we can still learn lessons from that. Okay, so the value and the usefulness, the efficacy of journaling, something that can afford us further understanding of ourselves and when we are going through loss. So Virginia Woolf was a pioneering 20th century English novelist who wrote in a free-flowing way. This stream of consciousness narration reflects a thought process which is unfiltered and just allows the writer to flow, to dump down their disorganized thoughts, feelings and perceptions. And this mimics the non-linear way that the mind works. So it incorporates sensory details, free associations, a lack of conventional punctuation or structure, and it gives you direct access to your internal state. Modernist authors like James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, Dorothy Richardson popularized this technique. And this was used to achieve an emotional and psychological realism. Now, what I want to talk to you about today is the power of journaling to support us and to achieve a further understanding of the point in question, which is loss, and be able to place it into a rational space whereby we can reason with it and further understand it. So Virginia Woolf style, this stream of consciousness style, it mimics the thought process itself. So our journal exercise, which will be at the end of this episode, invites you to try this style and then collect your ideas and restructure them in more of a Stoic capacity. So the idea that we are feeling something in relationship to a loss that we've had, and then are able to open our journal and to document in a free-flowing way everything we associate with that experience, gives us a sense of freedom. We're abandoning traditional punctuation, sentence structure, and grammar. We're not concerned with those things. We are seeking the natural flow of the mind. How can this help? Especially if it appears to represent the chaos, jumping between subjects, looping back on ourselves, random associations. But this allows us to express in a safe, contained capacity, i.e. our journal, everything, let it all out, and then go back to it and make sense of it. So the Stoic element here is the restructuring, the reframing, the holding the emotion, not just figuratively, but literally, holding the journal at a distance, looking at it again, rereading it the day after, and giving it some sense of order. Because this is what Stoicism represents in our lives today. The dichotomy of what we can control and what we can't. This chaotic journaling exercise for a modern Stoicist, I believe, can empower us to further understand who we are. One of the Stoic principles being knowledge. Have a deeper connection with our perception of the experience, and use that to then empower us to structure it with reference to Stoicism and organize it so that actually it is contained, it is manageable, and it is at arm's length. It's no longer inside, we've expressed it, we've let it out, and now we are in a position to take a break from it, distance ourselves, as I always say, hold it at arm's length. It's emotion that's happening to us, but it is not us. And be able to create that distance and then come back to it at a calmer time to reorganize our thoughts and construct them in a way that gives us a sense of peace. Because, as we know, the only things we can control are our virtue and reactions to things that are external forces. Loss is an external force. It will always happen. The sheer nature of being human means we will gain and we will lose. So it's about acceptance, Stoic acceptance, Stoic understanding, and empowering ourselves to be able to manage and contain the overpowering momentary emotion. So Virginia Woolf pioneered these narrative techniques. She wrote Mrs. Dalloway, To the Lighthouse, Orlando, A Room of One's Own. She was a key member of the Bloomsbury Group, who were a group of writers and intellectuals who challenged conventional norms in the early 20th century in art, politics and society, and along with her husband Leonard, she formed the Hogarth Press, initially from their dining room. They published their own work, as well as the works of other important writers like T.S. Eliot and Sigmund Freud. She was a passionate advocate for women's rights and explored themes of gender, sexuality and social inequality. Unfortunately, her mental health condition deteriorated to such a degree that in her 50s she drowned herself, leaving 2 suicide notes. But let's focus on the act of journaling and what she did achieve within her lifetime and how that supported her journey. So she would record her life rapidly for about 15 or 20 minutes. She's quoted as saying, "The habit of writing thus for my own eye only is good practice. It loosens the ligaments, going at such a pace as I do, to make the most direct and instant shots at my object. I believe that during the past year I can trace some increase of ease in my professional writing, which I attribute to my casual half hours after tea." So this time is when, if we are using, which is the journal task for today, if we are attempting this free-flowing exercise, we are using that time to think of a moment that we associate with loss, and we are dumping down anything that occurs to her, anything that occurs to us when we consider our sense of loss. The advantage of this method, she wrote, is that it sweeps up accidentally several stray matters which I should exclude if I hesitated, but which are the diamonds of the dust heap. And this is the point I'm getting to today. So, when we are only working in a structured way, we are, in a sense, confined. We understand, as practicing Stoics, or Stoics in practice, that we are nuanced, and the approaches we need to take in order to compartmentalize and come to terms with and dissect and understand moments and hold them, moments of high emotion, at a distance from us so that we can manage our inner peace, we understand the methods we use need to be nuanced too. There is no one answer. So attempting the same practice every day is a benefit because that's a repetitive decision we've made to empower ourselves, and there's power in that repetition. But the way we repeat, I would argue, can be in a variety of different ways, as long as those moments are sacred, those journaling times. And we know that daily writing brings this regularity, brings stability. It brings continuity to us. It allows us to possess our life, our experiences, to own them, and then go back to them, sift through them, and reflect on them. And as we are writing, we are achieving a sense of release of anything that is repressed. It gives us a confidant, our journal, when we may need one. It can serve as a reservoir for overflowing thoughts. Perhaps we may use it for planning retrospectively. And of course it can serve for us or our loved ones as a record of our place and time if we wish to share it. So, what did Woolf do? She would write down info dump, if you like, after tea. And then the next day she would reread her last entry before she added the next. And this, she said, allowed her entries to talk to each other. So over time, you may experience a sense of repetition. You may acknowledge, I've thought that before, as I've said to you in previous episodes of the Female Stoic Podcast. You will have repetitive thoughts. And when, as it's our job to see and recognize this, when they come up, it's your job then to say, I've thought that before, I've heard that before, you've said that before. And cut them dead. We are avoiding the sense of chaos, but we understand that it will occur, and what we're doing is seeking to manage the fallout. And what Woolf did was dump the chaos down and then come back to it. And as she said, there will be little diamonds in the dust. There will be points within that flurry of activity in which she stood a chance of finding something, some sense of making some sense of it amongst all the craziness. And this is the point. And rereading, going back to what she'd written the day before, would remind her of past diary concerns. It would invite her to complete narrative she'd already started. And if you are rambling in a literary capacity, in a journal, you can go back and then you say, right, well, I only started that point. Let's work further into that moment and see what comes of that. And we can then, over time, find themes running through, ideas, patterns, and you will find with your journaling that moments will be chaotic, other moments will be structured, then you will go back to the chaos and you will create more structure. And through it all, you will gain a sense of empowerment. Because you are, in a stoic capacity, you are taking charge of your sense of loss and the emotions that you experience in relation to that said loss. And of course, within your journal, if you are writing regularly, you will hear the natural human voice, something that is transcending the noise of the day, the narratives of other people, the agendas of the masses. You can pinpoint your humanity, what it is to be a human. So that's bringing you into renewed focus. It's allowing you to check in with who you really are. Woolf said, "I ransack public libraries, and I find them full of sunk treasure." She read Samuel Pepys' famous diary, and she is quoted as saying it made her one of ourselves. It gave her a sense of companionship and understanding. And her writing was very much of that ilk, very raw and personal and painful, raw representations of the human experience. Her journaling was a private space for her to process her thoughts and emotion, a form of therapy to manage and her struggle with depression. "Paper," she famously wrote, "has more patience than people." And the crossover we have with Stoicism is this: she wasn't a formal Stoic. She had reference to Elizabeth Carter, the Bluestocking group, although they were a century before her. She highly respected them. But through journaling, she was embodying this Stoic sense of self-reflection and emotional resilience, rational thinking. She understood that there had to be an outlet for the emotions, and she wasn't going out ranting and raving. She was containing it so that it was manageable, so she could look back on it, she could use it in her work, and she could make sense of it. This is courageous, the Stoic sense of courage, humorous. She had this appetite for life. Even in the face of many personal struggles, she was committed to the person she was and what she represented, and the challenges of being a female author in a male-dominated world. So if we now refer to modern Stoic journaling, often we are using a more structured approach, a preparation, a review, specific prompts, inspired by figures like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius. To the contrary, her style was about a free flow of consciousness. It was less systematic. But what my argument today is, occasionally we need a nuanced approach to something that is nuanced, i.e., the human experience. And there is an argument for structure. Once the chaos is down, there is an argument for needing to make sense of and therefore deal with situations, feelings, this sense of loss. There's a need to be able to do that in a safe way. Merely dumping feelings, expressions down and not then going back to review them is not enough. That's the first step of the journey. I suppose that's what I'm saying. And from a Stoic perspective, we then understand that now needs to be collated, organised, structured in some way so that it gives us an answer. Because we as humans need to resolve things. We need answers, we need moments of chaos to come full circle so that we can maintain our inner peace. Virginia Woolf said, "I am made and remade continually. Different people draw different words from me." This is a quote from her book, The Waves. Now, I found that fascinating because which words do we keep for ourselves? Do we in fact use all these words, but they're only spoken according to who we happen to be with? Again, I am made and remade continually. Different people draw different words from me. So, do those words exist within us? All of them, but it's only the ones we say that we ever hear. Because obviously when we're journaling, we hear all the words. If we use this stream of consciousness style, if we indulge ourselves for a moment, we can hear all the words. These words do exist within us. Again, she said, different people draw them out. But the truth is, different people draw out different sides to you, but all those sides, you are nuanced, all those characters are living within yourself. So it is an empowering thing to do. Get the characters down on paper. We should speak them all, regardless of who we are surrounded by. So, to go back to Virginia Woolf, the book that I have been reading this week is Mrs. Dalloway. And Mrs. Dalloway is a lady who represents emotional resilience, but actually is quite tortured inside. She has an awful lot of chaos going on. She's trying to conform to a restrictive social environment that rewards her stoic facade rather than emotional engagement. But yet she understands that in fact she is quietly suffering. So that's the point really of this episode, the sense of loss and being able to manage it without suffering too much, but being able to manage it by putting down all of the voices, all of our voices, representing all of us, all of the chaos, in a space that belongs to us. And her characters in this novel are engaging in social activities and parties to avoid confronting their personal troubles. So they are hiding and they are running away from what's happening. And what I'm saying is, she's a contradiction, as we all are. On the one hand, Virginia Woolf is journaling, is empowering herself. She is writing down all the characters. On the other hand, she's deeply troubled. She's suffering from mental illness and it is overpowering her. So she's making attempts not to suffer quietly, not to struggle internally, and yet obviously she's ill, and essentially it's just too much, poor thing. So she's acknowledging the value of Stoic practice, but she's also exploring the dark side of life and the connection to social pressure, and she doesn't resonate with the idea of emotional restriction. She believed that peace wasn't achieved by avoiding life, but confronting its reality and complexities. And my point here today is, I think, to confront this using our journals, not avoid it, deal with a sense of loss, but in a manageable capacity so that it doesn't overpower us. And I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, Stephanie here. Thank you for listening to the Female Stoic Podcast. It is an honour, and I just want to say I really appreciate you being here. It's amazing the power of women in literature and the Stoic messages they have to share. Please, if you can, return the favour by spreading their words and sharing this podcast far and wide, so more of us can benefit from their wisdom. And don't forget to leave a review if you like what you heard. See you next time.